right, let's bring in Larry Sprinkle. And Larry, per usual, you have a ton of stories to tell. You've been here a long time.
It starts very young for me. It started when I was about 4 years old. We lived in Savannah, Georgia, and a little church about 2 blocks from our house. One service, they had a film strip, as they called it, and the minister said, I want to introduce you to Billy Graham. And I'll never forget when he came up, and it was that powerful Billy Graham, you know, the one who was so emphatic about his beliefs. And that's what I remember as a kid. You know, that was my introduction to Billy Graham. And then from that point on, my grandmother listened to his radio show every day. He was in the newspaper. And then for me, when they dedicated the library here, right down the street, had a chance to go and be a part of that event. And at the very end, as he was going out, I had my camera with me. I thought, I've got to get a picture of Reverend Graham. So I kind of slid past some policemen. You befriended
the policeman. Right. That's the story.
Okay, I befriended the policeman. He let me get pretty close. And as I pulled my camera up, he actually turned around, he looked up at me and smiled. I got the picture, and I reached my hand out and said, Reverend Graham, Larry Sprinkle, I've known you since I was a little kid. And he just looked at me and said, bless you. And then his son, Franklin, pushed him away to have a big portrait taken of the whole family who was there for that dedication. It was about 60 of his family members there. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Beautiful family. But, you know, anyone who's from the Carolinas, or, you know, it doesn't matter where you're from, but I just know growing up as a kid, that he was such an important part of our lives, you know, and
I feel like
the power of his personality.
It's so true for people across the Southeast, especially in the Bible Belt. I mean, I know that my family grew up listening to his radio show. It's so common and so prevalent here. You can just feel his impact.
You could, and he really was the first media preacher.
Right.
You think about it. Because he started out on radio, then it was television. He was on television on one of the, I think on CBS quite often. And then you can still find Billy Graham today on the radio. WMIT at Black Mountain, North Carolina, a station that he used to own. They still run his programs. If you open up the newspaper, you'll find articles about Ask Dr. Billy Graham. So he really has not left the media. He's been out there, and I think that will continue.
It's timeless. Yeah. It truly is. His legacy is timeless.
We heard from Governor Pat McCrory earlier about how nervous he was when he was then mayor, had only been mayor for a short time, and had to introduce him on the stage here at the stadium when he was here. And you actually were there as well back in the day when he spoke there at the stadium.
1996, went to Bank of America Stadium and sitting in way up at the top, but I'll never forget, he drove out on a golf cart. Then he got out and he walked to the podium, up to the lectern there. As he stood there, it's like every single person, and it was almost like this wave of energy picked you up, and you stood up and looked down at Billy Graham, and you just saw that figure that meant so much. I mean, it was like, it was so charismatic.
Yeah.
And it was what the feeling, a lot of people, when you hear people say, I saw Elvis, and this wave of energy, it was like the same with Billy Graham.
And what a neat full circle moment for him. Miles from where he grew up on a dairy farm to fill a stadium of 70,000 people.
And you know, the story that's true about that, when he was going to come back to Charlotte for that crusade, I remember talking to some folks down here at the Billy Graham Library. He told them, he said, I'm just not sure. Maybe we ought to go to the Coliseum. It's smaller. I don't think we can fill that. Venue. And he was so humble about that.
I love that.
It's amazing.
And filled it up, you know, for several nights in a row.
I love it.
Incredible moment.
Larry, thank you, sir.
Larry.
Thank you.